Okay, welcome everybody. This is going to be a bit of a different interview, and I'm excited for this one. But before I get too much into describing what it is, let me just hit the disclaimers out of the way as always, right? Standard disclaimers do apply, not financial advice, not financial advisors. Please check YouTube notes for full disclaimers. Also note, there will be written work accompanying this interview as always, so just make sure to check out my Substack for companion article, written summary, and transcripts as well. I'll have that posted up here in the next couple of days. But the true reason we're here is Ian Fraser, CEO of Fathom Nickel, is joining me again, and there's going to be a bit of a different tone and tenor to this one. It's going to be a geology-centric episode. Obviously, geology is critical to every exploration story, but the knowledge that Ian and Fathom have accumulated and the confidence in their model, I think makes it especially important for people to understand this geological story. And so I thought this would be a great opportunity to have Ian on, and Ian is gracious enough to come on and almost sort of lecture style talk us through everything from very introductory sort of depositional modeling down to the more intricate sort of detailed expertise that he has developed on the Gochager and Albert Lake projects that Fathom Nickel now has in their possession. So yeah, Ian, thank you for joining us. How are you today?
Doing great, Matthew. Thank you again for the opportunity. Looking forward to this, and hopefully the listeners have a little better understanding of both projects.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is a good opportunity to try to help build up just that understanding of what the heck's going on up in northern Saskatchewan there. So yeah, we may as well just start nice and simple. I was reading your technical reports the last few days, and having a good couple of conversations around your own growth of understanding over the past few years. But do you just want to discuss through the depositional model that you're working through, right? I mean, and I'll be a little quippy here, and you'll forgive me, but it's a sort of a pods and pathways sort of model. And do you just want to just run through what it is that is going on under the ground there that you're exploring and pursuing?
Yeah, no, very good question. It's important to understand that these magmas. You've heard us talk about magmatic nickel sulfide deposits. Well, I mean, magmatic comes from magma, so you have deeply buried magmas, and these magmas are mafic and ultramafic in composition. And that meaning, mafic has less iron than ultramafic has something that's more iron. And these magmas, these particular magmas, they're already inherently, they have what we call the chalcophile elements. They already contain nickel, copper, cobalt, platinum group elements, gold, silver. I mean, it's all part of this magma. But to get the magma out into a magmatic nickel sulfide deposit, these magmas, when they are traveling through the crust, they need to come in contact with sulfur. And when sulfur gets digested into the magma, that's when things start to happen. The sulfur will attach itself to these metal ions that are already in this magma. And then depending on conditions, it's sort of the Pac-Man mentality. The sulfurs are starving for, let's just use nickel as an example. And then sulfur attaches itself to nickel, and you're spinning around in the magma. And then this magma gets stuck in what we call a structural trap. And then the sulfur just continues to digest. And as things get heavy, they start selling out. Gravity takes over, and then these Pac-Mans, if you will, these sulfur nickel bodies will just start floating down to the bottom of this trap because they're getting heavy. And so very, very simply put, that is the story of a magmatic nickel sulfide deposit. Of course, there's an awful lot of chemistry and a whole bunch of other things that go into it, but that is essentially how these things form. And we're recognizing this at Gochager Lake, and we're recognizing this at Albert Lake. And they're two in the same in that they're magmatic, but they're of slightly different character.
And so my natural follow-up, just to keep going on this, is that you have, these pathways that lead to traps. And I suppose, do you mind just going into a bit more depth about what makes a pathway, and what makes a trap a trap? What are the characteristics that make them conducive to both those things?
Okay, well, look, so in this first image, and again, I'm borrowing the expertise of Dr. Peter Lightfoot, who's been gracious enough to take an interest in both our projects. I talked about this magma needing to get up through the crust. So what you need is you need a conduit. You need, again, just to put things in a very simple perspective, just envision a great big crack in the Earth's crust, and that allows for these magmas to find their way up, and then, through the 1.8 billion years, there's all sorts of deformation going on, and so there's things moving around. Faults will activate, reactivate, and then this allows the opportunity for these magmas to come in, fill in the voids, and then, as they migrate around, certain areas for these things to settle out are more conducive than other areas. But, I think the important thing is, and this bottom image here, the line of section, if you can just imagine that being a crack in the Earth's crust, and as things get displaced, there's movement that can be up, down, it can be left, right. You get these dilatant zones, and these are all perfect conduits for these magmas to come in and settle out in.
And so, thank you. And so again, this extension question, this is something we covered in our previous interview, but to help this be its own kind of encapsulated, one-off interview, what you have is a standing theory around the original Rottenstone mine. We're talking about your Albert Lake project here in particular, that the particular characteristics of it being such a high-grade mine to you, it was this kind of clue that there was a heck of a lot more going on underground that maybe historical exploration understood. And do you just want to describe or explain, from the geological perspective, what your thesis is about what produced that mine?
Very, very simply put, more magma means more metal. And the fact that Rottenstone is, by far, historically, Rottenstone is probably one of the, if not the highest grade nickel mine in Canadian history. I mean, that's not far off. I've got to be careful there, but it was only 26,000 tons extracted, but 26,000 tons of, I can show you, I've got samples that run 4% nickel, and they run 10 to 12 grams of platinum group elements. And this is all inclusive: platinum, palladium, rhodium, osmium, ruthenium, iridium. 10.5 to 12 grams of the full suite of platinum group elements. This just does not happen in very many places in the world. If we draw a comparison, Raglan's running around 5 to 7 grams PGs, I think. Norilsk might be a little bit higher grade than that. Some of these offset dikes in the Sudbury Basin, these are producing spectacular platinum group element grades. But collectively, there aren't too many Rottenstones around. And this is really what fascinated me right at the very beginning of this this venture, shall we say. Rottenstone. So if you can imagine this outcrop that was, was this historic outcrop just packed full of metal of, 3 to 4% nickel and 9 to 12 grams of platinum group elements. Where does this come from? And again, more magma means more metal. And so Rottenstone is the tip of the iceberg. It is the first clue that there is something very, very significant lurking in and around historic Rottenstone. But why didn't anybody go at this with that outlook prior to, well, let's just say my involvement in this project, which goes back to 1999. And I think the simple answer to that is, the big companies, they're looking for absolute monsters. And they if your geophysics is only looking, let's be honest here, airborne geophysics, you're looking 0 to 200 meters into the Earth's surface. And if they don't see that great big fingerprint of something that might be lurking subsurface that's the size of 3 football fields, well, they walk away. And I think we've sort of separated ourselves from that is maybe call it an obsession. I mean, my wife thinks I'm obsessed with this, and I probably am. But where does this grade come from? Why is there only 50 to 60,000 tons is what the original historic deposit was deemed to be? Why is there only 50, 60,000 tons of this? It's got to be coming from something significantly larger, because again, just very, very simply, more metal equals more magma. So there's got to be a significant magmatic system there. And we've proven that. And I'll stop there, Matthew, because you might have another question before I take the next 20 minutes talking about what we've accomplished at Albert Lake. So maybe set me up with another question.
Well, well, no, I think you're saying exactly what I was hoping to have you talk about, right? That your thesis is that the pure existence of that high of grade means there has to be a heck of a lot going on below, beneath surface, subsurface, than that historically people have thought or understood. But maybe this idea of there being separate lenses, I use the language pods or lenses, right? I guess the question is that ultimately, what are you chasing? Are you chasing a large number of pods? Is there potentially, is there a chance of identifying, the huge source of it all, or where are you going with your exploration?
Exactly that. And this, I've got a few models up here, and it might be, difficult for the viewers to see in any great detail. But on the right-hand side, Dr. Larry Hulbert created this image. And again, just going back to the introduction here, so these magmas coming up this conduit. So, this is a conduit here. And then, this magma found a place to settle. And then there was, let's just call it a burp. And the burp called what originally was called the Hall showing, which has since been renamed to the Rottenstone deposit, or Rottenstone showing. And so this is what he's depicting here. So this is, this again, another tectonic event in the crust, which created another avenue pathway for these magmas to migrate yet again. And we know now that there was an absolutely perfect structural trap at the Rottenstone deposit, and that's why we had this deposit settle out there. And, the conditions between the sulfur it digested on its way to this structural trap were just perfect, because if, sometimes these magmas can get oversaturated with sulfur, and what happens then is there's the competition, you've got more sulfur than you have nickel in the magma. And then, of course, all the sulfurs are fighting for the nickel, and you just don't get this efficiency of metal segregation. So, the conditions at Rottenstone were superb. And that's why we had such fantastic grade and very good metal tenor. I'll leave that topic alone, because I know that's something you and I were talking about last night, and it could come up here a little bit later. Mm-hmm. So to answer, what are we looking for? Well, this image by Larry Hulbert is sort of a perfect example, because we know to the south of Rottenstone, 2,000 meters to the south, there's a historic showing that comes to surface called the Trombley-Olsen. And it is in this area that we couldn't do any exploration because of assessment situations. It was in the hands of the previous owner until the summer of 2022. It became available, this 360 hectares that covers the Trombley-Olsen showing. We went in there and did our soil geochemistry And this is where we're getting 750 ppm or 743 ppm nickel in soils, and we're getting, over a gram of combined platinum, palladium, gold in some of our soil samples. And so this is in the area of the Trombley-Olsen. So there's, if you have all this metal in the soils, there's something in that area that has, since 1.8 billion years, it's been kind of rotting away, and through fluids and, water and all kinds of wonderful things, all this, signature migrates up into the soils. And so the soils is telling us there's something subsurface. Now, is that the master magma chamber, or what Dr. Larry Hulbert used to call it, Mother Rottenstone? We used to use that term a lot, and then I was told to stop using that. But anyway, it's kind of a fun term. Where is Mother Rottenstone? So our exploration at Albert Lake is, yes, this is where we want to be, because this is going to be big, and it is going to be a very good grade because it produced the Rottenstone deposit. But as we seek out Mother Rottenstone, we're going to find more of isolated pods of mineralization, the Bay Island Trend. That's our discovery that we made in 2021 and followed up in 2022. That's another example of, this is part of a big system. And as we seek out the master magma chamber, we will find more of these isolated deposits, the grades of which that's just something we can't predict, because again, it gets back to that sulfur contamination argument. But yeah, no, I ultimately find the big one, find the source of all of this.
Yeah, Mother Rottenstone, I like that. We'll return to her in a moment here, but let's just discuss mineralization types, because you kind of put me on a great learning curve last night too, as you mentioned. But I mean, there is a wide variety of mineralizations that are available or present here, right? I mean, I'm just reading words from the technical reports and from our conversations, but disseminated, net textured, semi-massive, massive sulfide veins, and then also you have what you kind of almost a special Rottenstone mineralization. Do you want to just briefly discuss, maybe not so much going into the geologics of each individual type, but maybe just the relationship between them, right? That when you see semi-massives, what is that telling you about where you are in the location to the massives, that sort of thing? Can you just maybe paint us some context or frame the conversation around how all of these different types of mineralizations relate to each other? And then, if I may, just end with a nice little conversation, because I was getting excited when you were talking about the Rottenstone mineralization. Maybe we'll ask you to end there at the end of it. So.
Okay, well, on this particular image on the left-hand side, and here I'm drawing from Steve Barnes, and all these various cartoons of how these things do their business. And if you note, I've got this blue circle over here in this part of this cartoon. So again, coming up from the crust, all sorts of stuff going on. Continue migration of magma. And then over here, he's highlighting ultramafic magmas. And you can see that depicted in red here, these are what he's calling where the massive sulfides will settle out. And so if we, just using that bit of imagery, and then if we jump forward to this slide here, again, this cartoon in the middle, this is something, Peter Lightfoot and Steve Barnes. So this is magmatic nickel sulfide textures 101. So again, if you can imagine, I talked about the structural trap, and I think if you think of a structural trap as the, let's just go small to big. So you've got your plastic backyard swimming pool, and let's imagine you've got magma coming in from your neighbor's side of the lawn, and it's coming across your backyard. The magma fills up this small little swimming pool, and then it continues on, and Buddy 3 doors down, he's got a big backyard. He's got an Olympic-sized swimming pool. So that's the bigger trap. And then as these magmas are flowing over these basins, these embayments, the magma is going to get stuck. And so what happens, again, this gravity will start pulling all these large molecules now of sulfur that are attached to nickel and all the other chalcophile elements. And as you settle down to the bottom, all this sulfur just sort of jams up with one another, and you have these massive sulfide ores. I'm not supposed to use that term, but I'm going to. Settled down at the bottom of this trap / basin / swimming pool. And then as things cool, you go up from the bottom through massive and into what's typically called matrix style of mineralization or net textured. And net textured, just, net textured is exactly a net. Envision a large fishing net, across a bay of a lake, and you have all these squares, but everything is connected, and it's in these squares. It's the net textured is sort of rimming around. If you think of the hole in the net as the to throw out a term, the host peridotite, but within that peridotite, the mineralization is forming the exterior of your net. And so net textured is just meaning that sulfides are aligned in a net-like arrangement, and hence the term net texture. And then you come up a little bit further, and then things, as they cool out, again, everything heavy went to the bottom, but then you're left with these sulfide nodules, these globules, interstitial type of mineralization, disseminated type of mineralization. So if you're in the top and you put a drill hole through this interstitial and you happen to see one of these globules, you're going, that's kind of cool. Are we close to this? Are we close to this? And then if I can use our Bay Island trend as an example. So we were drilling in 2021. A long story behind that, but maybe get to that. And then we drilled a couple of holes with a very limited budget in the winter of 2021. We went back there in 2022, and from the ice, we drilled hole number 40, and voila, we got into these sulfide globules, these globular sulfide nodules, and then on a, so you zoom in on this, and you can actually see that the chalcopyrite will tend to be on one side of these nodules, and then we can actually see the pentlandite rimming around the pyrrhotite, which is inside the nodule. And so, I saw this come out of the ground, and Peter's a great friend and a fantastic geologist, and I sent this off to him, and I said, hey, what do you think? And he went, you guys might be close to something. And then if we fast forward, drill hole number 52, we get into the net textured style of mineralization. And this particular section here, 3.5 meters of 1.3% nickel. And then in hole number, this was 52, and I believe hole number 57. No, I'm sorry, this is hole 51. So hole 51, it was a small section, but excuse me, this was massive sulfides, and this returned a grade of 2.13% nickel. So, this is just perfection in a way, because this led us to this, led us to this, led us to this, and we now have 300 plus meters of this style of mineralization. At what we call the Bay Island Trend, which is roughly 500 meters west-northwest of the historic Rottenstone. So, proof of concept. Rottenstone is not all by itself, and again, if you just draw the comparison, so this particular grab sample here, I mean, this is a great place to go prospecting, because when they were blowing things up in the mid-60s, this fly rock was going everywhere. And you could probably make a bit of dough just collecting what they didn't put through the mill back in the day. So any rock that's purple, you hit it with the hammer, and this is what you see inside, is this beautiful net texture. And this type of mineralization, I sent off to Johannesburg to have an analysis of the other 4 PGEs that I was talking about. And this particular style of mineralization was part of a metallurgical study that we did in 2017. But the head grade of the pulp of this type of mineralization, here's the grades: 4% nickel, 1.38% copper, almost 0.1% cobalt, 10.5 grams, full suite of PGEs plus gold. So really, really spectacular stuff. And there was some massive sulfide at the Rottenstone deposit. This particular sample here, the pentlandite eyes just jump right out at you. This returned an assay of 8% nickel, 4% copper, 9 grams platinum, palladium, gold. So, again, really absolutely amazing mineralization. And yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun finding more of it.
Yeah, and I'll attest to that. I am extremely excited for this campaign and the next few as well. And I think that this is, we're kind of starting to get to the point where I wanted to make here in terms of, the rocks tell the story too, right? And maybe we just kind of help with establishing that narrative. But, as you spoke to, we've seen out of your core, we've seen globules, and you've seen neck texture. And I think even the news release that you just released, a lot of the semis, that all of this means that you're chasing and pursuing and vectoring in on those massive sulfides. That is, I guess that's the ultimate prize. Then is that kind of a fair summary of what's going on?
Yeah. In fact, as spectacular as the net textured style of mineralization is at Rottenstone, there should be massive sulfides lurking somewhere because of this whole model that we've been discussing. And given that net textured is so rich all by itself, you wonder if you had, again, if you can find the massive sulfide component of one of these pathways, one of these highways, one of these vents, one would anticipate that the grade would be pretty spectacular. Yes.
And so maybe this is an opportunity. It's slightly off script here, but you're the use of the word tenor, which we had, and I greatly enjoyed it. Our last conversation, our last interview, you introduced that concept as well. But when you talk about kind of the special Rottenstone mineralization, just for clarity's sake here, upcoming drill results coming from Gochager, which when I speak to you, it's a bit of a Sophie's choice in terms of if I make you choose, you don't really want to. You kind of love them both equally, right? Your favorite children. But that Rottenstone, just the nature of the mineralization makes that it particularly rich, even compared to Gochager. Can you discuss maybe at this point? Do you want to introduce the concept of tenor again, and then just discuss that concept?
Yeah, and I'll I find that sometimes difficult to explain, but yeah, let's have a go at it here. So, metal tenor. How much nickel do you have if you have 100% sulfur? And you've got to differentiate between sulfur and sulfide, because sulfide is a combination of nickel, iron, copper. It can be zinc, it can be all sorts of things. But 100% sulfur, so this sulfur has come into the magma and it's being digested by the magma. So if you had 100% sulfur, what is the nickel grade going to be? Because you need, to get the nickel, you need the sulfur. So at Rottenstone, the nickel tenor is running sort of 9 to 10%, which is absolutely spectacular. Now, comparison, Sudbury ores are running sort of 2 to 3, maybe at the very most 4% nickel in 100% sulfur. So right away, Rottenstone is distinguishing itself as being very, very spectacular. Now, the trials and tribulations of a geologist, we intersected this and I went, Eureka, we've done it. We have found another Rottenstone. And I remember one of my colleagues, we were getting ready for a board meeting, and he just said, well, look at it. It's got to have the exact same grade of Rottenstone. And we didn't have the assays at that point. And I just said, let's just hold our horses here. And sure enough, the assays came in. And, I mentioned earlier, 3.5 meters of 1.3% nickel versus something that's running 3 to 4% nickel. Here, the nickel tenor is down to about 2. So, you've got the exact same rock type, intrusions happening at the exact same time, but probably what happened here at the Bay Island Trend, there was too much sulfur introduced into that one particular pathway, that one particular avenue, and as a result, the efficiency, there was just too much sulfur clamoring around for all these chalcophile elements, and as the end result is not as sweet as Rottenstone. Now, we'll get to Gochager in a moment, but we're, with the work that we do, and again, we've got to thank Peter here, metal tenor. I mean, it's kind of, it can be a very, very good vectoring tool. So at Gochager, we're recognizing we have nickel tenors there of 3, 3.5, 4, which is very comparable to Sudbury, and perhaps in some cases maybe a little bit higher. So that's a healthy tenor. But again, the Bay Island Trend, we're down 1.5 to 2. And so, again, I told somebody it's like being a Toronto Maple Leaf fan. You get all riled up and then you get kicked in the teeth. So here we were, thinking that we had another Rottenstone, and yet the metal tenor turned out to be somewhat lower. But all that aside, Matthew, again, proof of concept. I can't emphasize that enough. This is a big, big, healthy system. The fact that you've got grades like Rottenstone tells me you can have these grades somewhere else. And, I can't wait to get the drill bit down to the Trombley-Olsen area. And maybe we've got the mother chamber there, or maybe we have another very large Bay Island Trend-like thing, because, geophysically, it's got a dimension of 450 meters in strike. So that could be another pod, or maybe it's a hint of the actual mother Rottenstone. Stay tuned.
Well, and I'm going to ad-lib here a bit, and I think this is something that I try to articulate to you as well. But when I look at, and why does Fathom strike me as such a compelling project? I mean, as you mentioned, your history that goes back to the 90s. I mean, you've been the primary consultant for 3 or 4 different companies over the past. I think was it 2015? I think when Fathom took over, but somewhere around there. But you were primary consultant to a host of companies prior to that. And that, so for me, this proof of concept that you reference, I don't know if I can name you another junior, and this is, of course, just my own kind of opinion and my own thoughts, but the high degree of understanding that you have developed, I mean, it's painstaking. I mean, like you referenced in a previous interview, rebuilding the Rottenstone Mines EM signature and rebuilt so that you can use that moving forward to help target other targets. The knowledge and the data you've developed and acquired and collated into a geological exploration model, the potential that remains here, and then of course the market cap. I mean, then that's just the unfortunate vagaries of the market itself. But this combination of data and potential, I find to be very compelling, right? But rather than me just kind of rambling on, you mentioned the Bay Island Trend a couple of times here. Why don't we just return to that, right? So you have this concept of ultramafic pathways. Do you just want to discuss with us Bay Island and Trend? What is it? What and how was it discovered, and its significance to your own exploration?
Yeah, no, that's good. Let's do that. Yeah, so this is a little bit of a summary then. Okay, so this tiny little island that you see here, this is called the island showing. The Inco discovered a little bit of poorly mineralized, but nonetheless mineralized ultramafic rock on the very north end of this island. And with one of the companies, I was in there, I think it was 2000. We stripped it back a little bit, I took a channel saw to it, confirmed that, yes, it's definitely there. Yes, it's definitely ultramafic rock. And yes, it definitely had some mineralization. And then if we fast forward to 2003, I was involved in a program. We drilled a hole. You see, I have 21/39. So 39 is referencing this drill hole drilled in 2003. So it was out in the bay, drilled toward the island. And you can see, a bit of a long story here, but we did intersect some ultramafic rock. Some of it was well mineralized. Visually I knew this, but at the time that this rock was not analyzed. Again, a long story, I'm not going to get into it, but fast forward to 2015, 2016, I assayed this core for the very first time. And what attracted me here was, rein me in if I'm going off course here, Matthew, but I think this is where we're sort of, methodology, I think is where we're going with this. In one of these columns, I have calculated what is the magnesium oxide content. And so this is hole 03039. So it was drilled out here in the bay. And in 2016, as a private company, trying to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, we drilled a couple of holes around the periphery of the Rottenstone pit. And this hole 16002 intersected mineralization that previously was not known. Nobody had ever drilled south of the historic Rottenstone pit. And again, if I can just sort of, draw the attention to the values of MgO, you see we're running around 19 to 22% magnesium oxide. And when I look at the magnesium oxide in this historic drill hole 0339, we're seeing 19, 20, and 15. So that was some, geochemically an indication that maybe we were getting close to something. So in 2021, we drilled a hole and it had intersected ultramafic rock, and it was by far the most mineralized ultramafic rock that I'd ever seen on this property. The assays came back and again, lower metal tenor, but, it was mineralized, but it wasn't, we didn't see net textured. We didn't see massive sulfides. It was encouraging. So this is my little blurb on lithogeochemistry. Very, very powerful tool, I believe, geochemistry. We drilled hole 21. We're using borehole EM, and the borehole EM, you can see here, the fact that it's crossed over this profile of the drill hole, that tells you there's something conductive inside the drill hole. And that's true, because we did see the sulfides in the ultramafic host. But it also is telling us there's something off hole. And in this case, we were drilling from the top of the image towards the bottom right-hand corner, and it was telling us there was something off hole right, which was more conductive. And then, 2021, we were going through our IPO. We didn't get back out into the field until the fall, and we didn't have the luxury of ice, so we couldn't go back in this area. But we drilled a hole, this being hole number 33, out on the island, and it was, we had to respect the distance that we were allowed to drill from the shoreline. We pointed the hole towards the island showing, towards drill holes 21 and 39. And I was telling you last night, Matthew, this was an absolute duster of a drill hole. And I thought, oh, well, we didn't get much out of this. But then the borehole, they followed up with the borehole EM, and my buddy in Toronto who helps me out with the analysis of all this stuff, he was having a beer and he almost fell off his bar stool because he said, holy crap, Ian, we've got this enormous off-hole anomaly in drill hole AL22000, 21033. And so this is what we're seeing here is the profile. And so the conductivity is building and building and building, and then it peaks, and then it decays as you go past the zone of conductivity. But what was really interesting about this is, again, this drill hole was just a sea of metapelites. There was absolutely nothing in there that would make you think there was anything lurking nearby. But the borehole EM said there was something very, very conductive above the drill hole. And this is again, I'm not a geophysicist and I'm still struggling with how they interpret these things, but the takeaway is something conductive above the drill hole. And we did some more drilling based on this interpretation, and that's how we found the mineralization in hole 52. So, a bit of intuition, lithogeochemistry. I've had the luxury of working with some fantastic geochemists and all sorts of projects through the years, and I'm a firm believer in geochemistry. And now, borehole EM. It's nicknamed the mine finder, the giant metal detector. It's an absolute must in the nickel business, and it's been a tremendously, very, very valuable tool, obviously.
Yeah, and I'm excited to talk about that too, because I think that is an absolutely critical. It's not new technology, but it's new to Gochager, Albert Lake, and as you kind of have referenced, I mean, it seems almost revolutionary in terms of helping you develop your understanding of what's going on. But maybe just, you did it, like you said, you did a good job of explaining the methodology of the Bay Island trend. But do you just want to discuss kind of meat and potatoes, or more to the basics of discovery and trying to define these deposits? Do you want to keep going on the Bay Island trend? Like, what is its significance to your project? I mean, I think you've got a couple other slides that you may be able to share with us. Is that true?
Yeah, and again, we've recognized that the Bay Island trend is lower tenor, 13.5 meters of 0.6% nickel. I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at, but it's not 13.5 meters of 4% nickel. This trend is wide open. It continues to the north. We recognize it geophysically. We recognize it with respect to gravity surveys, even some of our geologic interpretation. We know that this lineament is continuing off to the northeast, and we will do some more drilling there at some point, because we need to figure out, if there is a massive sulfide component to this, where is that? And anyway, I could go on for hours about that, but let's what we have learned at Bay Island trend. And I hope this is where you're going with your question, Matthew, is, where is it taken us? So the Bay Island trend, again, this is, 500 meters west-northwest of the historic Rottenstone mine. This is the area here that we refer to as the Trombley-Olson claims. Again, I alluded to the fantastic nickel values in the soils and the platinum group elements that we're seeing in the soils. I mean, how many places do you get a gram of PGEs in soil? So there's got to be something going on here. So we've done our geophysics. We did our surface geophysics. We did drill a couple of drill holes in March, which didn't explain the soil geochemistry. Right? We did get into some anomalous sections, and we do have some positive borehole EM results, but it didn't really tell us what we were hoping to find. But now we have done our surface geophysics. We have defined this conductor. It's 450 meters in strike. It has a width of 150 meters. It's coincident with a gravity anomaly. I'm getting a little astray here, but I'll back up to the soil geochemistry here in a second. So there's something 300 meters below surface that is very conductive and has a higher density than the surrounding country rocks. So what could that be? Now, an ultramafic rock is going to have a specific gravity of about 2.9 to 3, and then if you pack it full of metal, that specific gravity is going to come up to about, let's call it 3.3. And these are sort of rough numbers here, and I might have skewed them ever so slightly just to make the point. So an ultramafic rock, if it's full of metal, is going to have higher density than a metapelite that's going to have a specific gravity of, let's call it 2.7 for the sake of argument. Now, this dense rock is very conductive. And it's a lot more conductive than the conductivity that we've associated with the Bay Island trend. So what down there is conductive, that is dense, that's sitting on the eastern flank of an absolutely spectacular soil geochem anomaly that, it's not only nickel. It's, I could show you a plot of platinum all by itself. I could show you a plot of palladium, gold, cobalt. And then importantly, we were talking about magnesium oxide earlier. I could show you the magnesium oxide. You've got to do a calculation to make it MgO. But chrome, another pathfinder, it all stacks up like it does with nickel. And getting back to the Bay Island trend, you'll notice that there is a nickel soil geochemistry anomaly. This was defined in 2018. Our drilling post-2018 in the area of this soil geochem anomaly led to 300 plus meters of continuous nickel mineralization. This is a far superior anomaly. I'm getting promotional now. This is a far superior conductor, and it has a coincident gravity anomaly. And this white dashed line, if I can just jump ahead to the next slide. Here, let me do this. Can't I? It seems to have frozen up on me here. Anyway, the white dashed line is defining a lithological contact between granitic rocks and the supercrustal rocks, these metasedimentary rocks. And that is a perfect place for a structural trap, because you've got something that's very, very resistive in the granitoids, and the supercrustals, you can stretch them, you can break them easier. And so when you have all these magmas flowing around, they're going to sill out in these metasedimentary rocks as opposed to the granites, because they're just more susceptible to it. They're more porous by nature. They break easier. They bend easier. So, we just feel this is a very, very compelling target, and we're very much looking forward to checking it out here in 2024.
Yeah, the upcoming drill campaign, first, it can be potentially very transformative. So, I think that's a good segue, good transition here. Borehole electromagnetics, BHEM, borehole EM. Obviously, we kind of referenced this a couple times now, and you reference how it highlights so nicely these targets for you. Do you want to? I think you already articulated nicely, what it's doing, but do you just want to emphasize once more, what the effectiveness and the confidence level that it provides for you when you stick it down hole?
Let's go to Gochager Lake now. A couple of things that we need to talk about there. Okay, so this, you can see that okay, Matthew?
Yeah, perfect.
All right, so this is the image that came out in our press release this week, and it's a busy section. So what we've done here is we've compressed all the drill holes that we have drilled in 2003, with the exception of hole number 4 and with the exception of hole number 11. It's been compressed onto a single section. So we're looking at it kind of from west to east, and it's probably more off to the northeast. But anyway, so what we're, a few takeaways here, but let's stay focused with the borehole EM. And so when we, this mineralization that we encountered in 23003, 58 meters of 1.5% semi-massive sulfides that was running, 1.5% nickel. The borehole EM in that zone of metal is very, very conductive. You lay the loop out on surface, you send the charge down, it goes on, it goes off, and once it's on, the metal will absorb that charge, and then it creates its own secondary electromagnetic field. And then when you turn it off, you can, how long does that decay? And, if you use the bell analogy, you hit the bell and it goes ding, the longer it resonates, the bigger the hit. So the stronger the conductivity, if it's still being detected in the very, very late channels, that's a very good conductor. So it goes without saying that mineralization was a very, very good conductor, but you can't see very far beyond the drill hole when you're inside all this mineralization. But 18002, which it was drilled in 2018, so it's not showing up on this particular image. But it was a hole that was drilled from the right-hand side of this image towards the left-hand side, and it detected a zone of conductivity, and this is our area that we call conductor B for this image here. So it detected a zone of conductivity that was off hole left and very strong. You know, the conductance in this thing is running like 12,000 Siemens, which is very, very conductive. And our hole number 9, assays are pending, but we are illustrating that we've intersected some disseminated style of mineralization. We do have isolated zones of semi-massive mineralization. So this conductor, we've intersected with hole number 9, and we have, the results are suggesting that that conductivity is a result of these localized semi-massive massive sulfides. And I mentioned 12,000 Siemens. I'm starting to wonder, okay, well, that's pretty high. And, I've read press releases, we were talking about Australian-based companies, and they've got 20 meters of massive sulfide, and they're getting a conductance of 12,000. So, is there something else lurking out there that we haven't got to yet? And, interesting enough, these arrows are telling us that the borehole EM is telling us that conductance is building with depth. And, so if you can imagine a profile along the side of the drill hole trace, it's building and then it stops because the drill hole stopped. So there's something beyond the end of our drill holes that's very, very conductive, and we just didn't drill far enough. In fact, the geophysicist made the comment to one of our helpers out there is, why'd you stop? And I said, well, first place, we didn't know what was down there. We're in the process of exploring. But here, the significance of the borehole EM, there's something very conductive at depth at the Gochager Lake deposit. So that's something that we've got to get to. And, the simplest thing to do first is tack on another 150 to 200 meters in about 3 of the 4 of the drill holes that we've already drilled. And that'll give us a good look down there again with the borehole EM and try and get a better understanding of where this conductivity, this conductance is located. And then we can come at it again with the drill bit with a brand new hole if we don't hit something with the extensions in the first place. And so, if I can, let me see now, where do I want to go here? I think I'm going to go up. We're talking about massive sulfides. And yeah, so if I can, this particular image here. So our drill hole 23008 intersected a massive sulfide vein. So we've been talking about disseminated, we've been talking about globular, we've been talking about net textured. In some of the images that we put out with our press releases, we're in this, what we're calling semi-massive sulfide. It's kind of a term that's commonly used as a soft breccia. So the host rock is all caught up within the actual sulfide itself. But what's unique about 23008 is it's massive sulfide. You don't see any inclusions of the host rock here. And you can see that there's a very, very sharp contact between the host gabbro and this massive sulfide. So let's just think, something created a crack in the gabbro. And then there was, I was, yesterday we were talking, just imagine a tube of toothpaste and you put a bit of pressure to that toothpaste. Well, the toothpaste is going to come out. And if you're, next to a crack, it's just like puttying around your house. You're going to fill that void. So this is exactly what this massive sulfide has done. It has filled this crack. And then here again, this particular image was forwarded off to our good colleague, Dr. Peter Lightfoot, and he immediately responded with an image from a paper that he and Dr. Tony Naldrick worked on, Voisey's Bay. And, to quote what he says in his paper, near the Reed Brook zone, Voisey's Bay, Labrador, you see these massive sulfide veins that can be anywhere from 10 centimeters to 550 centimeters, as far as up to 50 meters away in the country rock, which is the Tassiac gneiss. So, here you've got these massive sulfide veins wandering out into cracks in the country rock, and they're not very far away from what we know is a world-class nickel deposit. So this, I said to my colleague, Doug, I said, sorry, Doug, I'm the geo here, but, if we were to get completely dusted with all our assays, but having seen this has got me sufficiently encouraged that, we got to go at this thing hard, because there's a big prize down there. I really do believe that.
Yeah, and it's so exciting, because I think in a variety of ways you're just showing us all the different pieces of evidence that you're compiling to suggest that you're vectoring in on Mother Rottenstone, or some very large, deeper down anomaly that could be potentially huge, right? And I mean, all this different evidence. I mean, this vein, 50 meters, that is not far away, right? And I mean, that's just a drill campaign away from potentially having a chance to intersect that thing. I guess maybe I have a question, just so I understand, airborne magnetics, and obviously I know that this is borehole, downhole, not in the air, so to speak, but I mean, there are limitations to airborne about how deep you can see into the earth, if I'm not mistaken. Are there limitations with BHEM in the same way? I mean, are there limitations to what it can do and where? I think you referenced earlier that if you're actually in mineralization, that can kind of corrupt its ability to quote unquote see. But what are the limitations kind of with borehole EM?
That's a really good question, and I've had to stop people that suggest you can see 200 meters beyond the borehole with BM, but borehole EM. But it's variable because the stronger the conductor, the further away you can detect it. So if your drill hole's here, and then you have just using this massive sulfide, if you've got a pool of massive sulfides that's 50 meters away, or let's just maybe pushing the envelope a little bit here, 100 meters away, provided there isn't anything else in the background that might be providing conductivity, you're probably going to see that, because it's so massive and it's so conductive. I referenced the off-hole anomaly in 18002. That drill hole that intersected that off-hole conductivity, that is probably 35 meters away from 18002. In fact, I'll have to, I'm going to say 35, but I'm going to call that a soft number. I should go into my leapfrog model and just measure that, because that's one way of answering your question is how far away from the drill hole was that off-hole conductor, and was that intersection point. So that, I'm going to say 35 meters, and I think that's a pretty comfortable number. So again, it's sort of variable. If there isn't any background noise, if there isn't any graphite lurking around, if there isn't any, the catch-22 in this business is, you need the sulfur. And sulfidic iron formations, which could be just pure pyrrhotite, are an absolutely fantastic conductor. In fact, pyrrhotite is the number one conductor, followed by chalcopyrite. But if it's all pyrrhotite and no nickel, that's really not much interest to us. And, that will suck up all the charge that you put down into the ground, and it will draw your attention to that. But it's, potentially the red herring if there isn't any nickel associated with it. So, in super conditions without any of the background, I'm going to say 50 meters, Matt, if I was to, and I'm using 50 because my good geophysical buddy, he says let's sort of keep it in the 30 to 50 meter range. That's something that he's comfortable with.
Yeah, and that's good to know, right? So it's not a matter of just the ultimate kind of smoking gun or a golden gun, but that it requires you have to get close for it to do its work or to work its magic for you. We are, you've got yourself a lunch and you have to get to, so you got about 5 minutes here. So I'm going to just skip a couple of questions here, and I might fire these off to you as we referenced previously. I'll ask Ian to conduct just a written Q&A with me, but let's just discuss. I mean, future targets, right? So you have a couple thousand meters that were assays are outstanding. I think for me, a very eagerly anticipated winter campaign that I hope that, we can get lots of meters into the ground and really start to really see how this thing can fly. But I think I want to give a shout out to Make a Copy here on CEO, because I think he really quickly identified there is a target that you and I were chatting about last night that his armchair geo, 1,000 meters south of the old Rottenstone mine, is something that he is particularly excited about. And then you kind of confirmed that yourself last night, right? Do you just want to maybe just discuss that as a target in terms of its potential and what it might be?
Yeah, well, that was this area in the Trombley-Olsen claims. So this image here and the blue polygon that you see on the image on the right hand side, that is the target. That is the so we've talked about that. This is an absolutely fantastic target. Geology, geophysics, geochemistry, even some of the till pits that were done by the GSC in 1987 and some of the biogeochemistry that's been done in this area. There's a lot of things that are pointing to this particular target. So that is very, very high on the 2024 wish list. And we will get out there. We will be out there drilling holes in the winter of 2024. And just, one further note, there's another area that, in the middle image, you can see there's a label here that we call the dime. And the dime, I'm going to call it number 2229, a drill hole drilled in 2022. We got into 13 meters of stratigraphy that is analogous to the stratigraphy that we see at the Rottenstone mine. And this is 4,000 plus meters south of historic Rottenstone. So in here we have ultramafic rock, and in here we have the pegmatite dikes, and we see all these things at the Bay Island Trend, and we see all these things at Rottenstone itself. And what was interesting here, Matt, was there was a weakly mineralized ultramafic intercept that we sent off to the lab, and it came back at 0.5% nickel with maybe 1 to 3% visible sulfide. So that tenor argument. So if you only have 1 to 3% visible sulfides, and yet somehow you're getting 0.5% nickel, and that's not inherent nickel. That's not silica-based magma nickel. That is interacted with sulfur. So that potentially has a tremendous nickel tenor associated with it. And that is, that's another high priority exploration target. We've drilled a couple of holes down there. We were kind of relying on airborne geophysics to get us aligned. And we realize now that no, we've got to go down there. We've got to cut a grid. The geochemistry down in that area is somewhat muted, but yet we've got this intersection at a depth of about 130 meters down that needs follow-up. And so, here I think is an area where we go in with the ground geophysics. We extend our gravity surveys down there. We do know there's sulfidic iron formation lurking, so that's a bit of a problem. But what can we do to differentiate the red herring from, the bad sulfur, if you will, from the good sulfur? So we'll try and figure that out geophysically, and that too is a tremendous target. And then, the Gochager Lake, just to wrap things up here, this is a historic deposit. There's no denying that. Unfortunately, the historic database is lost. What's available in the Saskatchewan assessment files, we have all of that. We know there's a halo of disseminated mineralization. Our drilling to date has been very, very focused in this one particular area. We have defined a chute within this disseminated halo that has some fantastic nickel grades, as obviously evidenced by 23003. But we think there's going to be more of these chutes within this disseminated envelope. We have opened up the Gochager Lake deposit to depth. I think we can say we've opened it up along strike just based on surface geophysics. We're going to be doing more of that. So how many of these high-grade chutes are in this disseminated envelope? And is there, like at Voisey's Bay, is there a neck? Is there a vent of massive sulfide a little bit further down? And, borehole EM is pointing at something very, very conductive at depth. We have that beautiful massive sulfide vein. So if we were to intersect the massive sulfides very quickly in 2024, I think we would be focused on drilling that as opposed to looking for additional chutes within this. We don't know how big this intrusive is. So that's the other sort of fun thing is we've been, we've done a lot. And I think we've done a lot of very, very good exploration in 2023, but it's been isolated because we're it's kind of our classroom, so to speak. We're learning, and now we can apply that knowledge to a much bigger picture, and we really look forward to doing that.
Well, I think that's ultimately a great place to stop here. I mean, I think that, you've spent 10 plus years setting the table, studiously building knowledge and data and layering it and creating these targets. And now it seems like that you're on the precipice or the cusp of all of that starting to pay off, right? And it's hard to believe in, 58 meters of 1.5% from last spring. I mean, if that's the party hasn't even started yet, if I could be my own promoter here too, right? But I mean, I think that very exciting future here, right? That this current campaign, very excited to see the results of. But even then, I still think that first pass at Gochager, that we're on the. I'm very excited for the future of Fathom. I think that the next drill campaigns could be awfully revolutionary in terms of what we see coming out of the ground. But I will stop there. You've got yourself a luncheon to get to, and I wish you good luck and thank you for your time, Ian. And I guess we'll probably have to we'll call a part 2 with the written Q&A. I might have to. I'll be bugging you again in a week or two for that. But thank you for your time, Ian.
Well, thank you, Matthew. Always a lot of fun. And I just enjoy the opportunity immensely. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for teaching us so much. Take care.
Cheers.